Hello, and welcome to the Dragonstone podcast. I'm your host, Matt Dragonstone, author of Tarot for the Spiritual Seeker, which is going to be the shameless topic of today's episode. I thought rather than try and be subtle and promote the book by innuendo, I'll just do an episode telling you all about it. So let's get into it, folks. It's going to be fun. So, a long time ago, I was standing in a library in Newcastle, which is the town that I was born in. I was about 7 years old, and I was at that time starting to read chapter books and feeling very grown up and feeling very, very intellectual for a 7-year-old from 90s Newcastle. But I was in the library in Mayfield, and I saw a book on the shelf that stopped me in my tracks. It was the first time that I can recall being visually arrested by an image. And the book was, I can't even remember the name of it, but it had a white cover, and there was a tarot card on the front. And it was an introductory tarot book. And the card was the Magician. I can remember it. From the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Beautiful yellow background and red and white and all the colours, and I can still remember the Magician sitting there on the front with all of his tools arrayed on the table in front of him. And I was just in a trance. I remember looking at this thing and not even thinking, just being arrested by the image. And so I borrowed the book. I stuck it with a bunch of other books kind of in the middle and took it up to the front desk, and the lady behind the desk kind of looked at me a bit funny but scanned it through anyway. And I went home and I hid in a washing basket where one of the old-fashioned big wicker baskets, I could fit inside it. I popped the lid on and I started to look through the pages, and I could not understand a goddamn thing that was written in that book, but I wanted to see those images because I was hooked. And that was my first experience with the tarot. So I came from, I guess you could say, a culturally Catholic family. We weren't practicing Catholics, we weren't particularly Christian, or we weren't particularly religious or anything like that. But there was still the superstitions and still the guilt, obviously, and still the sense of prohibition. And when my parents found out about that book, Jesus Mary, didn't I cop it? So there was a complete ban on that, and I kind of, put it to one side for a couple of years. And then when I was a surly, rebellious teenager, my first girlfriend gifted me a Rider-Waite deck of tarot cards, and I started to develop a deeper relationship with the cards themselves, mostly at that stage just through predictive practices, like trying to predict whether or not, well, let's just say trying to predict ridiculous things that teenagers do. But it was an in. I was working part-time, mowing lawns for a living, and so I took all my pocket money to the Book Hog in Newcastle, which is a famous 90s esoteric bookstore, and quite well stocked in a suspicious way. And I'd buy one or two books on the tarot and sort of read them but not understand anything. And from there, it just went from strength to strength, and I guess depth to depth would be a better way to describe it. So I read some absolute shit and and listened to some absolute bullshit about the tarot for decades, really. And I kind of built my own understandings where I would take about 50% of a card's meaning from a text, and for the longest time there weren't any good ones out there. In recent times there have been several wonderful books about the tarot, and I would marry that meaning with my own experience. I've been doing a daily draw for the tarot for about 17, 18 years now, one card a day. And I built up during that time an understanding of the depth contained in each card, minor arcana and major arcana. And that's kind of what I wanted to see in the world, but really just wasn't seeing in the quality of books that are out there for the most part. So I wrote Tarot for the Spiritual Seeker. I wrote it last year in 2025, and I wanted to put it out there as a small contribution to stem the tide of absolute fucking dreck that we see about the tarot in the world. I won't launch into a big rant like an old man, but you can get where I'm coming from because you've probably felt it too. You've probably been on social media and heard the most ridiculous interpretations of the Empress card or the Death card or the Tower or any of the other cards in the tarot, and just thought to yourself, that does not sit with my experience of what this card is, or that does not sound like a description of what the original authors of the deck, Arthur Edward Waite and Pamela Coleman Smith, his illustrator, were intending when they put it out here. So, in a world of endless wellness trends, the book that I've written hopefully cuts through the noise to make tarot a lifelong companion, just like it has been for me. So there's two ways with tarot that I've noted when it comes to introductory texts. The first is to focus on the predictive nature of tarot and to take the reader through the motions of using the tarot in cartomancy, or using playing cards or tarot cards to predict the future. And that's totally valid. But that's not how I structured the book. The book's focus is on empowerment and using the tarot as a mirror for self-reflection and not necessarily for fortune telling. Although there are divinatory explanations of each card in the book, the depth of the description of each of the cards is focused more on empowering the user to use the tarot to search deep within the self, to look inwards, or even to examine situations as they stand to get a deeper and often objective, but not too objective so that it becomes alien, perspective on what's happening. So I mentioned things like the simple daily draw that I do, 1 card a day, and I also do things like 3 card spreads and the Celtic cross and what have you, but more with a focus on empowerment, more with a focus on using tarot as a mirror for self-reflection, rather than using tarot as a straight-up fortune-telling device. Because I feel that the tarot is more suited to self-reflection, more suited to meditation, more suited to engaging with oneself and then by extension the world around them on a much deeper level. And that's where the uniqueness of tarot is for me. So that's what the book kind of aims to do, and that's why I've written the book now, because we are being swamped with AI fucking bullshit and we are getting totally away from what the tarot can actually do for you. And so the book is an accessible guide for building a syncretic practice. I wrote it from my perspective, where I blend Hermeticism and Catholicism and astrology and Kabbalah and Western esotericism and all sorts of stuff into my approach, but the book is more focused on empowering you, the reader, to integrate the tarot into your current spiritual practice. So the structure of the book is really straightforward. There's a history of tarot and the basics of the deck, and then we go through the major arcana following the Fool's Journey narrative, which I think is still relevant. Even though most people have moved on from that, I think there's still definitely some gold to be found in approaching the major arcana through the Fool's Journey narrative and as the soul's roadmap. And then we go into the minor arcana by suit, so we approach each of the suits as associated with a classical element. And here's the first part. I'm sure probably there's been others, but this is the first part where people are going to balk. I use swords for air, I use wands for fire. So we use swords for air and intellectual clarity, cups for emotional healing, things like this. We go swords, air, cups, water, pentacles, earth, and wands, fire. And then we touch on advanced applications now that we have an understanding of the tarot. We touch on intuition building, we touch on spreads, meditation and ritual use with the tarot, integration with other practices, and importantly, there's a chapter on ethics when reading for others. Finally, at the end of the book, like any good introduction to anything, there's a whole bunch of resources that I've personally found to be really, really useful and that I want to get people more into themselves, basically. And, that's all geared towards ongoing growth. So the first thing for people to understand about this book is that it's a springboard, it's not a Bible. So I want you to, if you purchase the book, and hopefully you will, after today's episode, hopefully. I want you to use it as a springboard into deeper study and deeper practice. And I want you to be able to take the book, read it, and get the fundamentals of what the tarot is from my perspective, and then hopefully have that ignite a bit of an appetite or a desire to look further, and then proceed along the path of tarot, knowing that you're empowered to do what you like with it, that it's not a boogeyman full of all sorts of bad things like my parents thought it was all those decades ago, but instead that it's something that can work with just about any spiritual system ever, that it can work with any number of belief systems, that it can enhance your existing spiritual practice. And that's why the book is for the spiritual seeker. Okay, so I'm going to read a short excerpt just to give you an understanding of my writing style and the kind of topics that we'll cover in the book itself. And, hopefully you'll enjoy it. So let's just do that. This is from chapter 1, which is Why Tarot for the Spiritual Seeker Today. And this is the subsection titled The Path Forward. What you'll discover in these pages is a thoughtful, accessible guide crafted for the spiritual seeker seeking substance amid surface-level offerings. What I refer to as the spiritual seeker is just this: the kind of person who, like me, seeks spiritual truths, but who does so from within the Western spiritual imaginary, and who has, by necessity, lightly built a syncretic yet functional spiritual system through which to engage with the world around them as a means of satisfying the desire for knowledge and wisdom. Because of the syncretic nature of my own spiritual practice, which draws from Western Hermeticism, Roman Catholicism, Druidry, Kashmir Shaivism, and yet more obscure belief systems from other parts of the world, I have made the descriptions and exercises contained herein functional, with an emphasis on avoiding prescriptive dogma in order to access the higher truths contained in the cards. We will refer almost exclusively to the Waite-Smith deck, which cannot be approached without an acknowledgement of Waite's association with Western ceremonial magic and Hermeticism through his association with the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And yet my aim is to show how the structure of Waite and Smith's tarot, its symbolism, and the meanings that it conveys through these can be beneficially worked with in any system of spiritual practice. We begin with the foundations, a concise history highlighting tarot's spiritual lineage, from its roots in symbolic traditions to its evolution as a tool for insight, an overview of the deck's structure including the major arcana's archetypal journey, the minor arcana's elemental everyday wisdom, and the court cards as reflections of personalities and inner facets, and practical rituals for selecting and maintaining your deck, ensuring it becomes a useful addition to your practice. From there, we delve into meeting the cards themselves. The major arcana unfolds as the Fool's Journey, a narrative of the soul's evolution from naive beginnings to enlightened integration. We'll group the major arcana thoughtfully, exploring the cards' lessons in spiritual development and awakening. The minor arcana brings grounded wisdom through the suits: swords for intellectual air, wands for creative fire, cups for emotional water, and pentacles for material earth. Each card will receive consistent treatment with upright and reversed meanings and spiritual insights. In the practice-oriented sections, you'll learn to cultivate intuition and personal symbolism, deciding whether to incorporate reversals for added nuance. We'll cover basic spreads tailored for spiritual inquiry, such as 1-card draws for daily guidance, 3-card reflections on past, present, future alignments, or adapted Celtic cross layouts focused on inner harmony rather than prediction. Finally, we advance to integrating tarot more fully as a meditation and ritual tool for shadow work and manifestation, in synergy with other practices like mindfulness, prayer, or energy healing, with clear ethics for reading for others, emphasizing boundaries and consent, and resources for continued exploration, connecting you to the broader community of speakers, a community of spirits, as the meditations on the tarot author envisions, spanning ages. I will refer throughout the book to several key texts on the tarot, which I have personally found to be eminently useful in deciphering and integrating tarot's truths. I will give their full details in the recommended reading section of chapter 18. If this resonates with you, perhaps because you've felt that subtle dissatisfaction with fragmented pursuits and yearn for a practice that honors both structure and mystery, tarot stands ready as a faithful companion, It doesn't promise instant fixes, but offers a path to earn your insights through engagement. Shuffle the cards, draw a breath, and let the journey unfold. So that's one of the sections from the first chapter, just to give you an understanding of my writing style and how I go about structuring the book. So when we compare my book with Waite's Pictorial Key to the Tarot, or even Venable Wen's work with Holistic Tarot, my approach is a little bit different. Waite goes straight into esoteric depth and assumes that the reader is already an initiate in some sort of Western ceremonial magical lodge-based tradition. And Wen likes to cast a very broad net when she's writing to present a holistic picture of the tarot. Both of these approaches are great, but as you heard with the excerpt that I read, my approach is to emphasize spiritual syncretism with whatever system you're working with. So it's better, I feel, to have a loose, light, although still comprehensive introduction to the tarot that has many hooks that can plug into whatever you're working with, whether that's energy work, whether that's some other spiritual tradition, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's Christian Hermeticism, whatever it is, you'll be able to look at the tarot after reading the book and be able to plug your existing belief system into the system represented by the tarot itself. So you'll be able to develop personal symbolism to make the tarot truly yours. And if you're a reader with tarot, you can look at the ethical guidelines chapter and see my approach to reading for others and the ethics that I bring when I'm reading for another person. Consider that if you like. It's not descriptive. It's not dogmatic. If you've shied away from tarot as woo, and I'm assuming you're not if you're listening to the podcast, then the book is going to show you tarot has a grounded and transformative side that doesn't necessarily have to invoke deeper prognostic or magical or esoteric themes. You can use it as a mirror to yourself and you can keep it that light. Personally, I don't, because tarot is so powerful and potent when you go deeper and deeper into it that I couldn't not. And hopefully you won't either, as in you won't hesitate to go deeper once reading the book. So there's a lot of ways that we can continue talking about the book, but I don't like self-promotion. I tend to get a little bit self-effacing when I'm trying to promote something that I've created, but I think you should probably check it out. You can buy it from Lulu Press, and I'll include a link directly to purchase it directly from the printer. It's a print-on-demand book. I've self-published it through my new publishing house, Dragonstone Press. I only had to be creative once, folks, but I'll leave a link in the show notes. You can also go to the Lulu bookstore directly at lulu.com and search for Tarot for the Spiritual Seeker, and I'll also leave links on my website on the homepage as well for you to click through and purchase the book. So I wanted to close with recapping the book's essence and just to kind of bring us out into the outro music. And I was going to say something fucking stupid like tarot isn't about predicting fate. It is absolutely about predicting fate. My emphasis with this book is on using tarot for spiritual insight and to accelerate and catalyze spiritual development. But there are so many different ways that the tarot works, and this is just one part of it. This is just one. And I recommend that you check it out. It's very reasonably priced, and like I said, I'll put the links in the description and everywhere else to find the book. My hope is that you purchase a copy and that you read it and that it works for you in terms of giving you a perspective on tarot that can work very seamlessly and non-disruptively with wherever you're at spiritually. And I think that that's something that we can take with us into this year and the years that follow, just as another, I guess, arrow in the quiver, another feather in our cap, or another weapon in our belts, let's be completely honest. Anyway, that's kind of it. This was awkward as fuck. Buy the book. Ciao!